Thanks for joining us, everybody, on the most exciting time of the year, in my opinion, because you get the college football playoff, and we got plenty to talk about. We're just going to dive right in and discuss everything that's going on. I have Joe Patrick from 92.9 The Game, certified Ohio State fan. Just want to throw it out there for everyone listening.
Okay. He looks like a Buckeye.
We're starting off strong here. Cody Chapin's down there from Dog Nation. We have a lot of expertise on here with college football. Oh, that was great. This is a good start. Tune into our show for the whole time now. I am an Ole Miss alumni, so I think we have a lot to talk about with this bracket. Let's start with the fact that Georgia, third seed in this college football playoff bracket. Did you think they were going to be ranked any higher coming from the Ohio State guy?
I did, actually. I thought Georgia was going to get number 2. I thought that they would get the 2 seed just because I thought that the committee might want to say, okay, Indiana, you were 2 and you beat 1, so you get the first seed. But then, Georgia, the SEC champ, gets the second seed. So that was a mild surprise. Ultimately, I don't think it matters really because, frankly, I think Ohio State and Georgia are going to beat both their opponents. I know on paper it looks like a Texas A&M or Miami could be kind of a frisky opponent, but I think Georgia and Ohio State are just way better teams than those teams. So ultimately, I don't think it matters all that much where they got ranked.
It's never going to happen, but can I tell you how bad I think the committee wants to see Carson Beck face off against the Georgia
Bulldogs? If Georgia would have lost yesterday, they would have made that happen in Athens.
No, I'm serious. I mean, and technically it's still could, but you've got a little bit longer of a road because they would obviously have to go through and then beat Ohio State, which I don't think is going to happen. And I honestly don't know if Miami can beat Texas A&M, but in theory, they could meet in the Fiesta Bowl. That's what I think everyone wants to see, although I don't think that's happening. Did you think that Ohio State was going to be number 2?
With how close it was, I could see it happening. And I just, they've had Ohio State up there the entire year. So if it would have been Georgia who would have been right there and lost, boy, they've bumped them down for losing in their conference championship game before, but that didn't happen. I at first was kind of, a little bit offended because Georgia played really well against Alabama, but when you look at the way the bracket shook out, to me, playing the Tulane Ole Miss winner is a much easier path than playing a Texas A&M Miami winner. So just athlete-wise, those teams are built, especially on the defensive line. So you worry about that. What's interesting is we're talking so much like we're just scratching people through. Last year, none of the guys who got byes won, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that it's fun to look at now, but we were all having the same conversation last year. All right, then Georgia's going to beat Notre Dame, then they're going to move to this. And boy, it had a funny way of just shaking out last year.
And ultimately, if you're going to win the national championship, you're going to have to play tough teams. You're going to have to win big games.
Yeah.
There's not you want to try to find a manageable path for your team, whether you're a Georgia fan or an Indiana fan, but you're going to have to produce the goods in this tournament in order to win the thing. And so that's what leaves me kind of thinking the seeding doesn't really matter all that much. I'm with you. I would love to see Miami play Ohio State. That would be a national championship rematch from an epic national championship that happened in the early 2000s. I think both Ohio State and Georgia, they just have such dominant defenses that just doesn't kind of get talked about. I feel like when you look at these teams, you just immediately think offense, which teams have the best offenses and which teams can score. I really think that Georgia and Ohio State just have really dominant, powerful players on their defenses.
Yeah, the top half of the bracket is so interesting. Look at all the different names that we have in here this year. James Madison, Texas Tech, Oregon, Alabama, we know. Well, I want to talk about them, but I'm just mentioning that. Oklahoma, Indiana. Who would have thought, on what planet would Indiana be number 1? Kurt Cignetti has done an unbelievable job there. I mean, unfreaking real what he's been able to do and turn that program around and be the number 1 team in the country. It's just funny to me looking at a bracket this way. It's cool because there's a ton of parity in college football. This is what the committee wanted. This is what's happening in the age of the NIL. You're getting different powerhouses. Everyone has a little bit more of a fair playing advantage, I think. And I think it's interesting because the conversation really was, does Alabama get in? And I believe there's a world where 2 things are fair. Yes and no. I think they do get in, and obviously they did, but I thought they should, given the fact that they played in a conference championship. You don't want to penalize a team for doing that. So if you pause them at the end of the season, it's 10-2, and they have a very impressive road win against Georgia, which is presumably, as we know, and the committee deems them as well, one of the best teams in the country. Cody, what do you say to a team like Vanderbilt, for example, because they have an incredibly unbelievable turnaround there. What's happening at Vanderbilt? They have NIL money for days, as we know. They have Diego Pavia, who wants to win a Heisman Trophy. Perhaps he might. They only lost 2 games this year. They had an incredible schedule. What do you say to them when you have to leave them out?
Well, I mean, to any of these teams, because if they were gonna get in, they were gonna be at the bottom of the field. At the end of the day, you could have taken care of business, right? You lost to Texas, you lost to Alabama. Those were the games that essentially left you out. But it's really tough because, while you would love to think if you are Vanderbilt that we'll just reload and get back, it's not that easy. And some of these teams that get left out, you think about South Carolina last year. They were so close to getting in. Boy, they weren't close this year. It didn't just happen, even though they had the same quarterback and so many of those players coming back. So that may have been, a once in a long time deal for a team like Vanderbilt to get so close. Now, those folks will tell you, we got Jared Curtis and we're going to have they'll be just fine up there. No shade coming from the Georgia guy. But, it's got a tough loss because you cannot assume that you'll be right back on the doorstep next year.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Vanderbilt's tough, but who I blame for Vanderbilt being out, right, if you're going to look at any of these teams and
that's fine.
It's James Madison, it's Tulane.
Are we done with that?
It's the structure of the tournament where we're including these teams, and I understand the reason why, but ultimately, is that what's best for the sport at the end of the day? Is that what's best for the fans at the end of the day? I don't know that it is. I think fans would be better served by seeing Vanderbilt and seeing Notre Dame in this tournament.
Yeah. College football loves the drama. Look at the NFL. They don't have someone sitting around a table and determining who makes it into the playoffs. And high school football is the same way. They don't have a round table of people, of experts, of a committee that say, hey, you guys get this and you get this seating. The NFL doesn't as well. So the outlier is college football. It makes for great TV. It makes for 3 hours of a stream to reveal this bracket, which is crazy. But the dialogue is endless because ultimately, no matter what, even if you extend the playoff, which some people do want, you're still going to have people frustrated at the end of the day because there are people choosing. It's not, hey, you won and you deserve to be here. It's you won because of strength of schedule and this team lost at this point. That's where there's a big gray area. And you have a team like Notre Dame. I'm going to poke the bear because our producer Megan Smedley back there being like, don't talk about Notre Dame. She didn't say that, but I'm sure she's not. They're left out of this scenario. And a lot of Notre Dame fans are very frustrated by that because they're ranked ahead of Miami the entire season.
Right.
And all of a sudden, at the nth hour,
when nobody played,
and the committee goes, just kidding, it's going to be the Canes. That's crazy. It's really hard to justify that scenario. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it just makes this weekly reveals like even less relevant than it already was. And
it's so annoying.
We knew going into it was a TV ploy, but it just makes it like, you're going to come on with this next year, as we get into week whatever of the season, I'm going to go, I already kind of ignored it, but like now I don't even want to talk about it. It's a waste of my breath to talk about this because the only thing they could do with this is they could treat it like the ACC official reviews and like let us have a mic in the room, let us hear what they're actually talking about.
Ooh, good idea.
They're probably afraid to do it because they don't want people to know what they know or don't know. Yeah. So they won't do it that way. But that's the only way that could stay relevant because, boy, when you have a team above a team and then neither team plays and then all of a sudden they're flip-flopped, well, they played head-to-head way back in. You knew what happened in the head-to-head way back then. It was the first week of the season. So if they were better then, they should have been better, the entire time.
$1 billion idea. You do a spin-off show of, like a reality show of the committee, and you get all the behind the scenes, and you get people fighting. And
yes.
I think it would be great.
Doing those confessionals and somebody, I can't believe he said that.
Yes.
Like Big Brother.
Yeah, you do the confessionals after,
really
after the team gets together. You about what the other person had to say.
I know.
That'd be great. That would actually be
They get in there and they're just like, wow, I can't believe they switched that at the last minute. I was not on board.
There's a secret vote. You give them like a big marker and some like burned paper. Yeah, like Survivor. You go up to the booth and write. Yes, that would be amazing.
I think it would be really great. Look, I like the bracket as it is. I know that's probably controversial. What are we going to do? They made up their mind.
Can I make a prediction?
I think you should.
I kind of feel like Indiana could get knocked out by Alabama or Oklahoma. Kind of reminds me of Oregon last year, where Oregon had this dominant season. They go into it undefeated, Big Ten champion, and then you have a week off. The other team gets to play. The other team, by the way, in that last year, it was Ohio State that advanced past Tennessee. But you have these like two blue blood programs who get a chance to get themselves going before they play you. Alabama, Oklahoma feels kind of similar to me.
And that's an interesting rematch. I was kind of surprised that they put them there to have a rematch because they played like a couple of weeks ago. It was a game that Oklahoma, of course, won, but Alabama like controlled the game, had outgained them in the game. It just had untimely turnover, so that could be really interesting. It's going to be on a Friday night in Norman, which is going to be really fun to watch. But like you said, that team gets to pick up momentum. So if it is Alabama that ends up winning, like they've kind of lulled their way into the playoffs, but they're going to have won a game, and they're going to have won a road game, and they're going to be feeling better about themselves, and they've got to heal up too. That was another part of this.
One other thing, while we're kind of reflecting back on last year. Okay, good. I got a lot to say. Now, when I reflect back to last year as an Ohio State fan, I was obviously I was mad that they lost to Michigan and got themselves kind of knocked down in the playoff rankings, but then they got a home game against Tennessee, and that was like the most entertaining football game I've watched. Like just to see the energy of that stadium.
That's because the SEC was involved, Joe.
Well, yeah. No, you're right. No, you're totally right. You're totally right. That is why. Like you saw a huge program come in for a game that both their seasons were on the line. Super intense. Tennessee didn't know what sub 20-degree weather felt like, and they got their ass handed to them. So, I wish that not that more teams kind of got to have that experience. 'Cause I really do think it helps those teams that get those home games.
A Tulane James Madison National Championship. Let's do it.
Also, the other thing about that game was that Tennessee fans traveled so well for it, and it became like this big festival. But I feel like it could be like that for so many different fan bases as well.
This is tough though. I mean, not that the committee doesn't weigh in the fans at all. I just want to let you guys know. I'm sorry to hurt your feelings, but it's true. And Georgia is going to have a lot of miles tracked if they want to make it to the national championship, Cody, because they've got the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, which conceivably most people could drive if you're in this general area. But then you're going to Arizona if you win. You could drive if you wanted to. I would not suggest. And then you have to go to Miami. Also could drive. I've done it many times. I'm from South Florida. Do not suggest. But that's a long ways to go. However, Cody knows as good as anybody. Dogs fans are going to show up.
They're going to show up. I do wonder about New Orleans because everybody was there and all the stuff that happened last year. Personally, I will just be open and honest. I had my fill of New Orleans last year, especially when I'm walking out and there's, poor Maria having to do news hits on Bourbon Street and, all of that stuff going on. Like, I had to walk on Bourbon Street the night I left, and it was weird. They had just reopened it. Like, I don't really care to go. And I think a lot of Georgia fans probably, a lot of times you want to bring your family. We're going to do New Year's there. I'm not bringing my family I'm sorry. And it's going to be super locked down this year and probably super safe. But I'm just not going to bring, and so I do wonder about that. And whether it is Tulane, which would be essentially a home game, and you get Ole Miss very, very close as well. So that could be against Georgia in that first game. That other crowd could be there. Not that there's a ton of Tulane fans. So I do wonder about that a little bit.
That's a good point.
While we're speaking of travel, if it is Georgia and Ohio State in that Fiesta Bowl, that is kind of like a home game for Ohio State. Like last time Ohio State and Georgia played, it was here in the Peach Bowl, and that was, I think, pretty. It was a home game for Georgia, but there was still a good amount of Ohio State fans there. In the Fiesta Bowl, Georgia fans will absolutely be there, kind of making noise for their team. But that's where like Ohio people go to retire in the sun and the warmth. So there's a lot of them down there, and they've been in the Fiesta Bowl a ton over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia fans will travel regardless, but you do make a really good point of something that I didn't really think about before. It's the PTSD of what happened last year in New Orleans that honestly, and rightfully so, is very tough for everyone to digest. I mean, it was hard for all of us that were there and covering it, much less the team that had to be there. Kirby Smart went through a lot of traumatic things. They're going to be in the
same hotel where his dad had a fall. I mean, like, you just think about that kind of stuff.
But I don't know.
And,
I don't know. It was just a very tough situation last year, obviously, to put it mildly.
Dogs never been to Fiesta Bowl. I think people would really gear up for that.
Fun.
Yeah.
Especially if you were going to do all of them, you could drive to New Orleans, save your money, and then fly out to Phoenix. But
You have winner? Like, are we any predictions on this? Like, who's going to be?
I'm going to take Oregon over James Madison. All right, you guys go next.
Let's go.
That's mine.
Megan was telling me all of the total. Is this total travel, Megan? Okay, so Okay, real life, you're getting some things of what's happening, Megan, talking in my ear. Athens to New Orleans, New Orleans to Glendale, Glendale to Miami. It's over 6,000 miles of travel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, back and forth to Athens each time, but still, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's tough on big bodies.
Yeah,
little
but you know
planes.
what? This team, what scares me about Georgia, scares me and also delights me because I would love to cover a national championship again. I think they're playing their best football.
Yeah.
At the best time. Now, granted, there are always mistakes and there are things to get better and correct and all that stuff. I'm speaking as I'm Kirby Smart, basically. But I just think this team is poised to go very deep in the postseason. And they are every year because Kirby Smart is the coach, and that's just how it works. But when I look at the bracket and when I think about the scenario for Georgia, I really do think that they could make a national championship run this year.
Can I say what's scary about Georgia to me, as someone who's not a Georgia fan and whose team could play them, is that like when I watched that Georgia-Alabama game, I do feel like Georgia can play so much better. Like, and that's weird to say because they destroyed Alabama. And like, what's scary about that is like Georgia manhandled Alabama. Like Alabama's a top program, obviously, with big, strong boys, great athletes, and Georgia physically dominated them. If they can get like an offensive scheme that can click, which sometimes can happen, like we saw with Ohio State last year, where like something clicked with that offense and it just started rolling. They could obviously easily win this tournament. They're definitely good enough to do that.
Yeah,
Cody?
Kirby Smart made it a point this whole offseason to run the ball and stop the run. That's how you control these games. That's how Georgia could do it. But you do look, yesterday I felt like Georgia tackling in the secondary wasn't great at times. Boy, Ryan Williams was still running around. A lot of missed tackles. There's plenty of stuff to clean up. It's going to be interesting to Kirby. I was listening to his press conference today talking about, you got to rest the guys. But Kirby likes to get after it a little bit too. He likes his Bloody Tuesday. So how do you balance that? Because you want your guys ready to tackle, and coming off a layoff, you worry about the physicality. So he's going to have physical practices, but at the same time, keep these guys' legs under them. They're also going to have all their early enrollees. They can throw those guys in there tackling dummies a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of those guys who will get in January.
To that point, I think one of the things that the tournament tests is like the professionalism of a team and being able to have a big win. Let's say it's like Alabama over Oklahoma, and then immediately put that behind you and be able to focus on the next big opponent that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think Kirby Smart, to your point, Cody, has really like ingrained that really strong. I feel like Georgia with the SEC schedule, I feel like they have shown that they contend with that better than any of their conference foes, and that's a huge feather in their cap going into this thing.
They're a well-oiled machine. I will tell you what was so funny about yesterday, and this is where I want to end, is that when he was on stage with Laura Rutledge and they're doing the whole trophy ceremony, he said, my players, they love to hit people. I heard from several players that they want to go do Bloody Tuesday right now, right after this game. And they're panning around to a couple of the different players, and they're like, it's just incredible. He definitely has a well-oiled machine down there in Athens. We'll be covering it for the duration of their trip and their travel. 6,000 miles back and forth between Athens and wherever they go if they make it to the national championship game. Guys, thanks for breaking down college football with me. We got plenty more to talk about, hopefully all the way through mid-January.